S&P unable to clear a key level. NASDAQ futures closing at the highest level since August 2022. Russell 2000 refusing to break. Bitcoin imploding after hours. Several technology names rising, but the sectors themselves not moving. We have a lot of key levels to go over, so let's just jump right into it. So with the S&P today, we're basically here and just sitting around and we're unable to do anything if you take a look at the index. Now we're going to look at the futures market in a moment here. But if we just drill into this, you're unable to get anywhere. Now why is that? Well, 7 of the 10 main sectors were down. The best performing sectors were XLC, which is setting up here, but we're still having a pretty hard time. So you're down 3 days in a row, equaled out, and now you're right back to that resistance level. We have to see if we're going to flip this. At this point, we'd like to get above that 60.14 level, which is the high of that doji. That's what you'd like to see. You'd really want to get above that key level if that's possible. And of course, this is Meta, Google. Now, after hours, Google issued a statement that they are going to be having an AI day. AI day. This will be on Wednesday, and they will unveil their plan for AI. Now, what's interesting about this is the stock's hardly moving after hours. I'm not sure how much I believe that. I would think that something like this should move the stock. We've been basing for some time unable to get through this 8.5 level, 108.5. Now, maybe this is going to be the catalyst that's going to get us over this. Maybe not, but the way that I look at it, I do think that this could have some positive momentum coming out of there. And I also think it might be an issue, and this is as somebody that is long Microsoft, but I do think it could be an issue for Microsoft. It's down about $1 after hours. There is this kind of mentality that Microsoft's not going to have any competition from Google, and Microsoft's going to be so far ahead. And I've been the proponent of this and actually put it out in the newsletter tonight. If you don't get the newsletter, link in description, it's free. Tonight's one goes through all of the large mega tech names and what's going on in the space. Now, what's important about this in Google is if Google can get its act together and start moving, well, then the XLC is not going to be reliant just on Meta. Now, Meta is trying, and the keyword is trying, but if we zoom in on this particular area, we can see a couple key things that we have to pay attention to. Number one, a gap fill would take you at least to the high here, and a true gap fill would take you to the close, 209. Now, if we come here and we just look at the doji from the day that we broke, and we can see that level very clearly, 236.71, unable to close over that since we lifted. And then here again today, we opened below the doji, but we are really pushing that upper band. The issue here is that we just need to figure it out. We need to kind of flip and push. And possibly tomorrow is the day. We have CPI this week. We have PPI this week. So you have some data out there that people are going to be watching. Now, CPI will be Wednesday, PPI on Thursday. As always, make sure that you follow us when we do the pre-market live shows. We actually trade usually if there is something worth trading live. So if you take a look at Meta and we look at what's going on there and we look at the XLC, well, it'd be nice to get some help from Google to lift that through 60, and then maybe we have a leading index, and that leading index would be XLC. And we just don't really have anything else if we sit here and take a look at it. You have the 200 pointing up, but we keep hitting these necklines and rejecting, and I think that's important. The other sector that was up that's worth noting is XLY, which has been struggling as of late, but we're talking up 30 basis points. So we really don't have anything of consequence that is leading except some of these mega names. So you have NVIDIA, which looks amazing. And just to point out the obvious, and I know a lot of people know this trade, but I'm going to walk you through it. So when you're at a level here, you always want to watch these resistance levels and how you act. But if we clean off all of this and we understand where that level is right here coming across, we can drop that one in for this discussion and then come across here. Well, when the first attempt fails and the second attempt gets through, this is usually much more powerful. I don't really care if you're down 20, 30 cents after hours. It's going to be a question of how do you act tomorrow? Do you get above 292.20 and do you push? And the answer is you very well could. you very well could push tomorrow here. I don't see any reason why you're not going to get back up into these wicks, and that's 10, 15 points from here, and I think it's realistic. It's not very common, I'm just going to say this, it's not very common to reject the second time you're trying to push through, especially when it's this close together coming off that kind of move. The only thing that's bothersome, and that's because you have CPI and PPI and people sitting on their hands, is that we just didn't have any volume. But you are starting to see these two names clearly become the leaders. Now, AMD, I've been watching this channel forever. We broke out of that channel today. This is kind of how the stock trades. Finds a channel and then trades in that channel. What you want to have happen here is you want this to pull back before you're getting involved. So where's our leadership? Well, AMD, NVIDIA, but then you go and take a look at the SOXX. Well, the SOXX hasn't even begun if this is going to be leadership. And then you look at some of the top 3, top 4 holdings in the SOXX. Well, they didn't go anywhere today. We didn't really see that huge rally, that huge push of all the big names. They just kind of bonked around a little bit. They didn't really do much, right? They're kind of setting up. Maybe we're setting up for a move, maybe not. But all these leading names, the only two that really participated, AMD, NVIDIA. And I think that's an extremely important fact that you have to deal with. It's AI related, and that's why they're moving. So the AI is not going away. It's going to be here for some time. NVIDIA, AMD now, with Microsoft's help, are going to contribute to that. I expect to see volatility in the space, but I expect those kinds of names to continue to grind higher. And we are fortunate because we have a lot of names that we can sit here and talk about today in the way that they're acting. And you're seeing a lot of little breakouts today. ON finally got through 33, as I put in the newsletter. We've been in this in the Alpha Chasers community. I think we got in around 29.40. If you're interested in joining the community, the wait list is open again, and there is a link in description. So it's closed, and then it's open via a wait list, and then it goes from there. So if you're interested in becoming a member, just click the link below and put your email on the wait list. Now, you're getting over here, and you can push. So you start going through these names. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is XLY, right? So you start going through like the XLY names and go, okay, well, Amazon. What does Amazon look like? Well, that looks awful. That looks like every time I get to 200, I'm going to reject. Okay, so now it becomes specialty retailers. And that's where this gets really interesting. And we start seeing the high-end brands, well, they're doing just fine. LVMHF, you don't really get much more high-end than that brand. And you can see right here how you're forming this huge flag and setting up. Speaking of the higher end brand, Race is the name we're in, around 284. You can see it's at 297 right in here. This looks great. This looks like it's going to keep pushing. So what we're seeing are two things. We're seeing this barbell in XLY. Now, by barbell, what I'm referring to is you see right here, which is the low end, right? And then you come across and you have nothing in the middle, meaning the Macy's of the world, the Sears of the world, the Nordstroms of the world, those kinds of stores, right? We're not really seeing a lot there, and this is just an absolute awful barbell. See if we can make it better and I can redeem myself. Well, that's not going to redeem myself at all. So what we're going to have to do here is clean this up and put this back in. And for posterity's sake, I won't even edit this out. So, okay, so there's my barbell. Now, what I'm getting at is this part, the lower end. Now, you're seeing buying in the lower end, and you're seeing buying in the ultra high end. Where you're not seeing any buying at all is right in here. This space right in the middle, you're not seeing any buying at all. And I think that's pretty interesting. So what do I mean by that? Let's go through a couple of these names and so that you can understand. So we go and take a look at StarBucks, for example, right? And I think that's a really good spot for us to start. Let's get rid of this in a minute. But let's talk about StarBucks, okay, and what's going on there. Clean all that off. So we had earnings. Now, from my experience, 14% growth, 4%. Yep, they're going to cut costs to go forward. They're going to automate. They probably said AI on the conference call because that's the cool thing to do. But you're seeing people go to Starbucks. Starbucks is holding its own. Okay, it's been holding its own for some period of time. You can look at the trough valuations. And this is because the bottom 10% has more disposable income than it's had in a very long time. Now, you can equate this to politics. I don't really care. how you view it, but this is driving the growth, and it's driving growth of McDonald's. Besides, food prices rose, and as food prices rose, McDonald's charged more, CMG charged more. Well, do you think that they're going to lower their price points on food because their costs are lower? Or do you think that they're going to be out there to make as much money as humanly possible? I'm going to argue that they're out there to make as much money as humanly possible. So then you see names like Wingstop hitting all-time highs. So you are seeing this entire barbell. So I find it interesting that of all the things that are moving today, it's XLY. But I want you to take this because I spent a lot of time this weekend on this and thinking about it. When you come out of a bear market, the very first stage of that is this huge base, right? And we're out of a bear market. Just technically speaking alone, we come out of this. And I'll walk you through what I mean. So there's the low, here's the high. And the moment that you're at 20%, the moment you're at 20%, you're out of a bear market. Now, we can split hairs and say, well, I'd want it to be 21%, or whatever. You're out of it. This is the low. Deal with it if you missed it. It is what it is, okay? So now we know where that's at. But what are we doing? We're not going anywhere. We're on the road to nowhere. Well, why is that? Well, earnings were not as bad as they were supposed to be. We were supposed to lose, something like 6%, right? Or 7% we were supposed to lose. We were supposed to be minus 7% first quarter 23, right? And we're actually plus 6. So that's the actual that came in. And I think it's something like 80% beat. So we were supposed to be negative 7. We're actually plus 6. So the bears didn't get their case. Inflation is coming down no matter what anybody wants to say, unless they're delusional. It might be, coming down a little slower, but it's coming down. So we have that whole bear case going away. We have the last rate hike that's out there now. They've destroyed the regional banks. So now they'll start cutting because they raised, and that we can do a whole hour on that alone. But so we look at this and go, okay, well, what's going to be the driving force? Well, when you come out of a base, the driving force becomes stock selection. And the active investor is who starts to make money again. And that's somewhat interesting. It's not just high beta. So what we're seeing is the rise of the active manager again. So this is a Barron's article, and a lot of people don't know who this is, but David Einhorn is one of the top hedge fund managers in the world. Now, what's interesting is he's been not doing well the past 10 years. Now, what's been going on the past 10 years? Well, there's a lot that's been going on the past 10 years that's going to hurt the active manager, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But if you see here, he had his best year in a decade, 22. Hedge fund was up 36.6%, helped by short positions of high-flying stocks, some winning longs in the coal sector, and Twitter. Now, I'll tell you where I'm going with this. If we go back to 2000, all it was .com, tech. Doesn't matter. Come up with a website, get 1 million people to go to your website, and then all of a sudden everybody would just get supply. Let's just really blow this up for a second so you can get this. So we can see this huge rally, and this is when QQQ kind of started. So that's as far back as it goes, 99. So we can see these levels. Well, during this period of time, value investors and the active fund manager got absolutely destroyed. The people that were buying anything.com related made a killing. Exactly the same thing that you saw happen here with all the SPACs. Everybody was buying a SPAC. Didn't matter what it did. As long as it said SPAC in it, you were getting involved. Every single IPO that they wanted to come out and shove down retail's throat, they were able to come out and talk about how great the company was. I'm sure you guys will remember Rivian and how Rivian completely blew up, but it was hailed as, the next great car company, the next Tesla. Lucid was the next Tesla. You all remember this, $65. We're sitting at $9. Coinbase was hailed as a visionary. The stock was 440. You're down 90. So here we are. And what does this have to do with anything? Well, when we come out of this, the first group that moves is the active investor. Now, back here, we lost one of the largest and best fund managers of about 30 years during this period of time. Just like Einhorn underperformed for 10 years, and we're going to talk about why in a moment. But if you sit here and look at these periods in time, after a year or two, the active manager, when the market's going sideways and rebuilding, The active manager is the one that kills it. So how do we profit from this? So the way to profit from this is to start looking for themes. Now, this is my thought on it. For example, if we take a look at the AI names, and you go and take a look at AI, we'll get into retail in a second here. Look at the AI names and you can see the froth and then how they run up and then how they pull back, right? These names are probably not done. They're probably going to continue to push. But what we're seeing here with Microsoft, besides these mega cap names, and what we're seeing again with Google, whether or not Wednesday's a big day or not, you're seeing the consistency of the theme. The theme is not going away. The theme is AI. So if we're aware of the theme, we can act on the theme, right? We could profit from the theme. So we know NVIDIA is going up because of AI. We know AMD's participating because of AI in the collaboration with Microsoft, right? I mean, that looks like an absolute monster compared to what it looked like 2-3 days ago. And the frustrating part about this, and this is why I think last week was one of the hardest weeks of the year, was when you start looking at the index and you keep waiting for the index to do something, or you keep waiting for the NASDAQ to finally break out. Well, I think we're asking the wrong questions. We keep talking about where the NASDAQ's going to go, where the S&P is going to go. And yes, of course, I want them to go higher. But there are themes, and I think the focal point needs to shift to individual names. For example, at this stage in the cycle, one of the themes that happens is energy names come down. So we would probably want to start looking at things like DRIP, right? Start focusing there, start looking at those kinds of names, make decisions. Do we want to short Exxon? That kind of stuff. You have the AI theme. The other theme that's outstanding right now is regional banks. So we start looking at regional banks and going, okay, this is where we're at and this is what's going on. And this is a really good regional bank, even though it's down right now. I'm actually in this one at 9. They were allowed to buy assets from the FDIC. If you start getting into this theme, you can start seeing what's happening. Look at this FCNCA, right? We're breaking out again today. Why? Because they're coming out with earnings and they're going to be an absolute monster. Everybody knows they're going to be a monster because they were able to buy assets on the cheap and have them basically backed by the FDIC. So that is one theme. Well, if we start taking a look at the other side of the theme, you have names like PACW, where we're, quote, waiting for them to say, okay, the short sellers you're no longer allowed to short sell. Well, maybe that does happen. Maybe that is a theme and then we can act on it. But now if we look at some of these regionals, well, they look absolutely awful. This is day one on Wall, for example, and I'm already setting up to break below 26.5. So for me, this theme probably is going to continue to the downside, and I'd be looking at this 27.20 tomorrow. Matter of fact, as we're talking, what I'm going to do is just put an alert there. Comment on the format of this. It's very informal, and the reason for that is because I want you to think a little bit about your thought process and what you're doing right now. Are you doing the same thing over and over again? Are you waiting for NVIDIA to break out of these ranges? Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. I'm waiting, but what happens? They pull back and then they're breaking out again. And we're seeing these themes. And I think if we focus from a thematic standpoint, that we can both do better and profit more. I'll give you an example. This is something I bought today. Okay, I've been watching this since $38. We had this little pullback. We were building a flag. We broke out of the flag. It's very clear. BZH is trading at roughly 60 cents on the dollar, right? I don't particularly like this pattern, so it's not something that I'm going to get involved with. But I would be telling you to be looking at the home builders. And if you don't understand that, I would suggest that you do some research on this theme and why this is not going to go away. It's cheaper to buy a house than it is to rent on average, even though affordability of house is at one of the lowest levels ever. But we have a 6 million shortage of housing right now. That's not going away. And people that have 3% mortgages make up 50% of the marketplace. They're not selling their house. They're not getting 3% again. So they're locked into their house. They're not going to move. So this would be another theme that I'm looking at that I think could work. So there I gave you 3 themes. Comment below on another theme and what you think. I'm really curious about this. I'm also curious about the format of this video because it was done more of a discussion and what people are thinking and where you think we're going to go from here. I will touch base on a couple names that came out tonight that I think are important for tomorrow. PayPal was an absolute, utter disaster, and you can see that it's selling down here now. The guidance wasn't great. You're falling down. I'm hoping that we get down to somewhere along this level so I can get involved. I'll show you that level, that's 67. Elliot Management owns 9% of the company. Same exact thing that I'm doing here with PINS. I'm waiting for some kind of turnaround to get involved, and I finally started to get that turnaround in PINS today, and you can see that right there. Now, I'm a long-term investor in both of these companies, and I don't really trade them. I just want to have positions along with Elliot Management because I've seen what they've done over the years. But and that's a different account than the trading account. But if you look at this right now, you're holding these support levels. This gets pretty clear. So you want to look at that Planter, if that's how you pronounce it, had one of the best conference calls of all time. They said AI probably 70 times in comparison to Microsoft 64 times. Therefore, the stock is up about 25%. It is what it is, guys. It's themes, and I think it's going to continue, so keep that in mind. Airbnb, take a look at Airbnb right now. You see you're trading up just a little bit. You have earnings coming out tomorrow. I'm very curious about this one. And finally, another one that I'm very curious about on the 10th that I have a position in is IEP. I am currently long, and I am very curious how this acts on earnings. Again, please comment on this video. It was done informally so that we could look at it as a discussion and talk about it. And I'm really curious about the themes and what you think about it. And I do think that people like Einhorn, I think they're going to shine in 23. I think it's going to be the active manager that is starting to understand those themes. And we talked about ONON, the theme, the retail theme out there. We talked about Nike a little bit, that theme that's going on right there, where people have more disposable income than they've had in the past. They're going to Starbucks, they're buying their favorite sneakers. We're seeing that theme continue. So that's it. Have a great night.